without further ado, this afternoon it's going to be about mental health and distance learning. When we say distance learning, it is what all our students who are studying, experiencing. I have also recently experienced being at the other end, because I have recently started to take teaching loads in psych, and it does have its challenges. So as a disclaimer, I claim no authorship in anything that I will present. The only thing that I can bring to the table is what I have experienced and learned, and what the Lord will guide me into speaking. So let's check the facts. So it has been a fact that COVID-19 has resulted in schools being shut all across the world. So globally, there are over 1 billion children who are out of the classroom. And as a result of that, the way we conduct education has radically changed. So teaching is undertaken remotely and on digital platforms. And according to the researches that have been gathered so far, changes that the coronavirus has caused in terms of education might be stay. In other words, because it seems that we're not going to experience anything different in the next months. Whatever we experience education-wise, it's going to be like that for some time. So what will that mean for the future of learning? So since COVID-19, there has been a surge, or an increase in the usage of language applications, virtual tutoring, video conferencing, and online learning software. Sorry for the typo. Some believe that the unplanned and rapid move to online learning will result in poor user experience. It's unplanned because the pandemic took us all by surprise, even if it should not have. So nobody has prepared, not the Department of Education, on what to do with it and how to effectively deliver education. However, there are those who also believe that there are going to be benefits from this new method of learning. The vice president of an online learning center said that he believes that the integration of information technology and education will be further accelerated, and that online education will eventually become an integral component of school education. Because we have tested what it can and it cannot do, its limitations. So in the future, even when the pandemic is over, it seems pretty sure this time that the use of distance learning and online education will also stay. So some students have shared the impact of online classes on their mental health. So there's an article and I just took snippets from it. So one said that having other people to work with and socialize with would have been really helpful. And another said that doing the online class by myself was more stressful than if I was in an in-person class, and made my mental health harder to take care of. A lot of students find this true, but somehow there are also those who like it better this way. So I'm talking about the ones who prefer to be by themselves, the ones who are a bit introverted and have social anxiety, they somehow thrive. Although it's, in a way, it seems that it depends from person to person. I have read of an article that said that at the beginning of the pandemic, so that was March, for most of us, they said that the situation, being locked in our houses, it would be favored, by introverts. Do you know what introverts are? No, introverts are the ones who are usually quiet, the ones who prefer not to socialize. They said that they predicted that in the course of this pandemic, the introverts will thrive, while the extroverts, will find it difficult to adjust to. However, at the later part of the year, they have started to conduct surveys, and learned that it's actually the opposite. Meaning, the introverts, there are more cases of introverts going through depressions and suicides than the extroverts. And one of their explanations for this was that whether we are introverted or extroverted, whether we prefer to socialize or keep to ourselves, it is still human connection that helps us maintain our mental health. So because of the lockdown, what happened is that introverts had even lesser chances of being forced to connect with people. So the more sila na nagpakuribong. However, the extroverts because of their nature, they constantly found ways to connect to people. So whether it's via Zoom, it's ranting through Facebook, they found a way to express themselves. So they still were able to adjust better. So I hope that as this continues, we will find a way to continue to reach out to people. A professor said that in his experience, he said that it has changed the way of teaching. It enables me to reach out to my students more efficiently and effectively through chat groups, video meetings, voting, and also document sharing, especially during this pandemic. So my students also find it easier to communicate on Lark. Lark is like Zoom. It's an app for communicating and collaborating. So it seems that there are people who find it to be serendipitous, that the use of technology has enabled them to reach their students better. So what has been the impact of online learning on mental health? So articles would usually tell you the following. One could be social isolation, because we know that schools are the center of the social lives of teens. And in fact, it's not just socialization that we learn in school. To me, I still pray that the pandemic would be over very, very soon, because this is not normal for our children to grow up in. See, if you, it is through social interaction that our kids learn to recognize authority, that our kids learn that everybody is different and it's okay. They learn to negotiate, to assert themselves, and all of those things that are important, no? Social skills that are important. So, in distance learning, teens may feel lonely, unmotivated, or discouraged without regular social interaction. Because being teens, um, they their emotions are still very volatile. No, so they can become emotional easily, and also teenagers may worry about changes in their friendships as a result of prolonged isolation. No, that so there are those who are very fond of connecting with friends through social media. That is good for them, but there are people who prefer interpersonal, physical interpersonal interactions. No? So another impact could be increased stress and anxiety. So I'm sure you may have heard lecture upon lecture of how to deal with stress and anxiety. So what may happen is that students may feel heightened anxiety about keeping up to date with their schoolwork. So in terms of stress and anxiety, it also depends, it seems, no, in my experience, on how persons cope with all of this. So sometimes I ask even if it's not related to their reason for consult, I usually ask my patients, so how are you doing with your online classes, no, or your modules? No, so there are those who find it stressful, and it would also amuse you that there are those who are okay with it, who can just keep up with all the modules that the others are complaining about. No, so it would seem that it still varies. No, it depends on how a person sees these challenges. No? So for some adolescents and young adults, being in front of others on video can lead to its own anxieties. I did have a patient who is like this, who prefer to be in a face-to-face class. No, because she said that she feels anxious not seeing the people when she reports, not knowing what they could be thinking, and not knowing who some of her classmates are. No, because in an online class, you can be halfway around the world and still belong to that same class. No? Students may also find it difficult to receive the extra education support that they need to succeed. No, and sometimes even just signal, no, the limitations of technology becomes a problem. And if that becomes a problem, it causes an anxiety when students find it difficult to pass their requirements because of the limitations of technology. Another impact of online learning on mental health could be virtual learning fatigue. Some call this Zoom fatigue, no? And it can happen to both students and teachers. No? It is described by a feeling of being worn out, with having to be on, or online all the time during the many virtual meetings. So partly, it's because our brains need to get used to. No, it's initially unable to process information the way it is accustomed to. So we know that we take both verbal and nonverbal cues from our interpersonal interactions. No? So we assess, determine a patient's tone of voice, facial expressions, eye contact, body language, which also makes me happy why I'm here. No, I will always prefer looking at people when I speak than speaking towards a camera, even if I understand that it can reach more people, um, and even across different places in the world. No? However, there is, I should say, no better reward than being able to see from a person's facial reaction, no, and looking at the person's eyes whether you have been understood, whatever it is that you are talking about, and to see whether the two of you have a connection. So even clinically, we do that also. It's called telemedicine or teleconsultation. We do that, but it still cannot replace the value of a face-to-face interaction. So when it's difficult or impossible to pick up on these nonverbal cues, our brain has to work harder, and interpret the information that it receives. For all you know, you're talking to a robot, in your computer screen. um, and also coupled with constant self-awareness of being on camera in front of others, that will add to the stress levels. So there are just people who are not as comfortable talking in front of the camera as some others are. So that adds to why there are those who feel anxious and why there are those who don't. So how about this online learning? Is it as effective? Let's see. So it is effective, of course, for those who have the right technology, for those who have good reception and signal. I can remember Justine, my little sister. She would tell me that she has classmates from her masteral class who have to go down from the hill and go to where there's a signal, like on a church or on the side of the road, just to catch signal for their online class. So that is a lot of challenge, that can also pose as a danger, and where physical safety can become an issue. So a research showed that on average, students retain 25 to 60% more material when learning online, compared to only 8 to 10 in a classroom. And they said that it is because the students are able to learn faster online because of it takes less time to acquire what is being taught online. So you immediately get your requirements. You can also learn the different lessons on your own pace. So if there is something that you don't understand, you can always just go back immediately, scroll back, reread, or you can even skip, but you can't do that obviously in a classroom. So it has its own advantages, obviously. But also, effectiveness of distance learning can vary amongst age groups. So where are they most effective? So probably older children, because the younger ones need to be in a structured environment, because kids are more easily distracted. So which is why teachers need to be trained to use tools that help them engage students and promote classroom values like inclusion, personalization, and of course intelligence. So that becomes a challenge, when conducting an online class with children, because children still need their senses to learn. So this is why it is important that for those who are teaching their children at home, we need to find a way to make learning fun for the children, and not make it traumatic. You know. Although we all know that because we keep seeing it in social media, how maybe the reason why children are also coping, in the Philippine setting at least, it's because it's the parents who do the modules, and yeah. So I don't know if that's supposed to be. Maybe that's also like that can be a double-edged sword. No? In a way, the children are not as pressured, will not feel as pressured as they would. No, but in a way also they are not learning as much as they should. So is there hope for distance learning? For some students, being home and around family, particularly during the pandemic, can offer feelings of safety and reassurance. So that is the main goal in the first place of staying at home, to feel safe. However, not all social interactions are positive. So for those who, for example, have experienced bullying and have not been happy in school in the first place, they will find comfort staying at home. Virtual learning also offers an escape from depression and anxiety caused by the fear of being bullied, and also peer pressure. So because it's less likely that you will be peer pressured online. So in a way, there is an advantage to distance learning. So although the mental health consequences of staying home for school may be daunting, especially in the Philippines, in Western countries, distance learning has been practiced for a long time. So even my nephews, I can see that it's doing them a lot of good. Staying at home and learning and being assisted by their mother. However, in the Philippines, because for very obvious reasons, where majority of the people probably depend on 4Ps, and financial assistance, distance learning in a very ideal setting is just not possible, which is why we have been ill prepared in conducting it. So I hope in the school year that follows, everything will have improved. So it is possible, though, to mitigate the impact on children if parents and teachers are willing to find new ways. Because they say that we cannot transfer what was done in the classroom. There are just things that we can't do we can't copy, from the classroom on the online setting. So we will have to find a different way of doing things. So distance learning can also provide an opportunity for kids to develop self-regulation skills or the ability to manage progress toward goals. Students might have several assignments with deadlines throughout the week, so they must create strategies to accomplish the task. So this is where self-regulation, discipline plays a role. So in the online environment, many students are learning how to self-regulate more effectively. And self-regulation is something that we are going to need even after we graduate and find work. So that is in an ideal setting. Like I have said, in many of the homes, it is the parents who are doing the modules and the kids are doing the games. And that becomes, if it becomes an addiction, then it becomes difficult to manage. online and gaming addiction is another topic on its own. So, we will be learning practical things that I hope that we can apply, especially to those who are those who have children and those who themselves are experiencing and going through distance learning. So, what are the 3 ways to reduce stress and build connections during distance learning? There are 3 basic principles, and that is the 3 R's: relationships, routines, and resilience. So in terms of relationships, virtual advisory groups and individual online meetings can be done. No? So I suppose there are and should be PTA meetings online also. No? And we can stay connected at home by pursuing activities that we can do together. No? So there are, I have seen it in my nephew's online classes, no, that they do activities online together. So they do artwork, you know, or they also, as described here, they cook together, you know, and we can do other things that has something to do with connecting to people. So one of the things that I appreciate in this pandemic that has come out as a pleasant, you know, change is that I have been able to connect with my cousins, no, on weekends, no, and we did not do that, no, especially with the ones who are in faraway places, no. So that's a good thing, no, and I keep hearing from people that they have also done the same with their high school classmates, no, and also their relatives. So one teacher even organized Tasty Tuesdays, no, during which her second grade students share breakfast via Zoom. Now I have seen a video of this also some time ago, no, and so the kids actually do nothing. They just talk about their breakfast and what they like, no. So that is, even if that seems like a very small thing, that actually caters to the feeling of connectedness. So routines, our brain actually like routines, no, and our brain also prefers routines. It is more relaxed when, for example, we have a regular time of waking up, no, although for those who work in a hospital or in a call center, that's that's a little difficult, no, but for those who have regular work hours, no, it is the healthiest thing to do to establish a routine. No, the brain actually does not like being surprised. Now, one day you sleep at midnight, and then the next day you sleep very early, and then you keep it as irregular as that. No, it's actually very unhealthy. No, and it causes the release of stress hormones. No. So schools can support families by encouraging routines like healthy family meals, daily exercise, mindfulness. So all of these things that have been taught on how to manage stress, no, and anxiety, schools should also be encouraged to make sure that those things are being done, no, among their students. So for example, there's this teacher who dresses up as a superhero and tells bedtime stories regularly to his students. You know? So the key word there is regularly. You know? Because again, it is important, it is calming to our brain that we have a routine. So the thing that Dr. Malata has talked about, I'm sure you know a lot about already, is resilience. And resilience is built over time. And Filipinos, I know, are known for their resilience. Is that true? So I'm sure you have seen pictures, no, of Filipinos getting wed during the flood, playing mahjong with while the water is waist deep, mga amo sina, no? So we are known to be resilient. So there is no other time to prove, no better time to prove our resilience than this pandemic. Okay, so it's although it may seem to be a challenge to the younger generation, no, to teach resilience because they are known to have a very what we call this short a low, very low tolerance for frustrations, no. So it could be a challenge, but nevertheless, no, it can be taught, no, by being constant and by being there, no, constantly. So another practical thing that we can learn is these 7 ways to combat school burnout, no, or distant school learning burnout. There can be we can hold remote learning conferences. So it doesn't necessarily mean na with the teachers, no. It can be a conference within the family, no. So it's important that we need to get our kids talking by asking them how they have been faring in their modules and online classes, no? So it's important to ask them, no? And by putting our kids in the driver's seat, meaning that they should be asked about what solutions they can give to whatever issues and problems they have with their modules and online classes. I had a patient, for example, that would skip his online classes and would rather do his modules because he feels that after an online class, if he still has to do his modules, he feels like he's being robbed of the time that it's supposed to be his me time. No, he said that after an online class, if an online class is supposed to be treated as a regular class, then after class dapat wala ka na may ginaubra. No, so instead of but he still had tons of modules to do. So instead of attending his class, he did his modules. No, and although that became a problem because eventually his attention had to be called, no, and it had to be solved also. So these things, if our children have problems with this, we need to know why, and then so that we can also ask for help from the teachers. You know, brain breaks are encouraged. You know, so it can be any activity that gives us a break from the online class, you know, from the modules. So it can take just 2 minutes or 5 minutes of doing something else. So I have found, for example, a website that gives suggestions for brain breaks. You know, so you could just jump all around, make waves, because you are imagine that you are all staying at home. So you need to curb the boredom, you know, of just sitting there in front of the computer or in front of your all the paperwork, no, the modules, no. So kay different na siya sa classroom. In the classroom, when we get bored, what do? No, manguhit ta sa classroom, machismista, no, or we ask the teacher if we can go to the bathroom even if we don't really feel like urinating. No, so there are things that we can do when we're bored, but at home, sometimes your mother will be beside you and you can't get off, you know, from that chair. So it's important that the parents and the children work together on how to make things better for this situation. My nephew, for example, CDC, no, Justin noticed that during his common class, mga ka 3 times, 4 times, gina siya nga, mahaba nga, I will go to the bathroom. Nga wala siya gapangihi, no? So even if it's just a 30-minute class, no, mga katatlo siya yaya mag-go to the bathroom. No, so it's important, no, to find ways to make learning fun and not burdensome. We can also make over our learning space. Although in the Philippines, I know that many families, too many families, this may be difficult kay kung ano ang sitting position ta, amuna na siya because of the space of our houses and all that, no. So there are, but I suppose that there can be little ways, no, that we can make over the learning space. No. We can change seating arrangement, no, switch things up, put a little bit of decor, and make things look like the environment seem as if you are in a classroom. No, we can also set goals or revisit our goals and rewards, like because students may not be aware of the progress that they are making. No, so they might feel that, especially if it becomes a routine, every day module, and they might feel that they're not learning as much. No, so it's important that there is an assessment, no, of how much they have progressed, and it's also important to manage our tech tools. No, so sometimes, for example, passwords for Zoom and other platforms. No, parents may need to make a master list because even just navigating that can be stressful to some students. No, so it's also important to do that. No, and no, webinars, guides, and even hardware and hotspots can be used to help parents navigate online school. No? So sometimes parents have to learn, both parents and students have to learn how to make videos, know how to make your presentation and make it into a video. I don't know how to do that. But if you're the teacher, you can just tell your students to do that. They don't necessarily have to know. What else? Adjust at-home learning routine. So again, here comes the word routine. It's important to develop routine. And then it's also important to keep teachers on the loop. In other words, there are things that you may need to tell the teachers about, because you, as parents, we become like advisors, no, class advisors to our children. So there are things that you might notice that the teacher will not notice because you're the ones who are observing the kids. No? So, for example, basi may mga difficulties sila in certain areas, you can tell that to the teacher also. No? And so that you can ask them for suggestions. Also, if there are things that really don't work, no, we can try different things. There are alternative learning courses. No, we can make use of tutors and after-school programs. No? So all of this we can do to help our kids be better able to navigate this learning in the midst of a pandemic. So there are a few ways that parents can do to help kids learn at home. So first is, again, ask your children what they are learning. No, it's as simple as that. But again, Filipino parents, they know exactly what their children are learning because they're learning it themselves. No, you should guide them through breaking down assignments into smaller tasks. No, so in other words, going through the activities one by one with the kids. No, pre-pandemic, a lot of kids did not have this privilege of working on their homeworks with their parents because their parents are busy. But now that the parents are forced to stay at home, it's either bonding time for them or the opposite of it, no, because they are forced to do things. No. So we can also help them organize their time and set short-term achievable goals for shorter school days. No, so there are different, they can do different tasks, no, and different levels, tasks with different levels of difficulty. And we must insert the fun and the learning, alternately. We have to give children choices about how they accomplish the tasks, so that they will not feel like they are being driven by a slave driver. So it's important. And we can also offer feedback, personalized and genuine feedback about the work that they are doing, in whether it's module or an online class. So it seems that this distance learning is both advantageous and disadvantageous in different ways. So this is where, again, our resilience will actually play a role. In a way, we can see that it's a matter of perspective, however we see our challenges, whether it's online or distance learning or other challenges that are that we are facing in the face of this pandemic. So it can be the difficulty of being laid off from a job, or especially for those who have no work, no paid jobs. We can see it as an opportunity to do other things and build our resilience muscles. To see it from the point of view of 17th century samurai, he said, "My barn having burned down, I can now see the moon." So again, it's a matter of perspective, how we see these challenges, whether they can affect us negatively or positively. And this pandemic is there is no better time to prove what Mrs. White has said than now, when she said that upon all parents there rests the obligation of giving physical, mental, and spiritual instruction. So she said that it should be the object of every parent to secure his child a well-balanced, symmetrical character, because this is a work of no small magnitude and importance, a work requiring earnest thought and prayer no less than patient, persevering effort. So a right foundation must be laid, a framework strong and firm erected, and then day by day the work of building, polishing, and perfecting must go forward. So we have suddenly become the advisors, the school advisors of our children, and that is a very big task. So I would like to leave you with two texts that has something to do with being resilient, not just spiritually, but also psychologically, emotionally, and mentally. In James 1:12, it says that blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life which God has promised to those who love him. And in 1 Corinthians 15:58, it says, therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. So, I hope that as we navigate the challenge of getting education, or helping our family members get education in this pandemic, we can remain steadfast in the Lord.
My question, kaya Doc Jan, I would just like to know what the effects are of not just visual learning but exposure to like the internet for like really young children. Thank you.
It is actually one of the things that have to be watched out, no, because there's school who is familiar with Gamot Kugon. No, Gamot Kugon, no, one of my mentors, no, she volunteers there. So I am aware, for example, that gadgets are not encouraged, no. So these are times that have become confusing actually, because now we have to make use of gadgets, no. And one of the dangers that is posed there is kids, the young ones, okay lang ang the older ones, no, but the young ones are unnecessarily exposed to material because they have to hold the gadgets, unless that you put filters, no, that the parents know how to put filters in their search engines, no. So that has become a problem, kids being exposed to material that they are not supposed to be exposed to yet. And also the obvious consequence of addiction to internet use, whether it's gaming, it's surfing, it's so they are very young, no. And an addiction that starts at a very young age is even just makes things more difficult, no, because as part of the lecture has said that self-regulation is one of the skills that they are supposed to learn, but in young children that becomes difficult if the parents are not careful about regulating also the time that kids are holding the gadgets, no? So important na siya nga ginalimit, no. So sa una, pre-pandemic, for example, those who are from toddlers to 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8 years old, ideally the pediatricians and child psychiatrists would recommend not more than 2 hours of gaming and internet searches per day. But now, what can we do, because it has suddenly become the norm, no. So yes, that is another part of the double-edged sword, no, of the use of internet and gadget use in general, no? Isa sa mga pinakabudlay, so I had a patient, no, a few years ago. He is 8 years old. Masuicide siya kay ginkuha ni mama iya tablet, diin ka na iya kakita sang amo sina, no. So muna siya, no. The children really should not be allowed to hold gadgets as much as possible, no. Why give them a phone kay wala pa man sila appointment, wala man sila mga emergencies and all that. So